Hello and good evening, everybody, and welcome to our third webinar in the series that we're running this week. Our previous series saw, bear with us, sorry about that. Our previous series saw us meandering through Africa with Florian, which saw us follow the footsteps of Livingstone and Stanley. And then last night we went exploring with Quark Expeditions to the Arctic and Antarctica. Tomorrow evening it's actually myself hosting, and I'll be taking us around the world with our best luxury villas that we've created over the past 6 months. So tonight is all about escaping to Australasia. And the two speakers tonight are myself, and we're very lucky to have Matthew Doidge with us. Now, Matthew Doidge is actually not just one of my travel consultants, but also the UK ambassador for Aussie specialists who run the specialist side of the tourism to Australia and New Zealand. So Matt actually went through quite a tough criteria to actually win that title of being the UK's ambassador. And we're very proud that he is part of our Hayes and Jarvis family. But before we go on to that, I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about Hayes and Jarvis. And I think we can honestly say it's been pretty tough in the world of travel, especially over the last 6 to 9 months. But I think the news that Boris Johnson gave this week has given us that hope. It's given us a date to work towards. And you've probably seen in the newspapers the surge of people inquiring about holidays. And we're definitely seeing that here. And the team are working all hours to fulfill those inquiries. And we're trying to keep the prices down with our operators because they're obviously capitalising on that as well. But one thing that's really stood out through all of this is just the enthusiasm and the pleasure that we have of travelling. And myself and the team over the last 6 to 9 months have really worked hard to build up our destination knowledge so that when everything bounces back, we're ready and we're better than when we were before, when we went into COVID. And there's a few things that we've really invested in, and we're quite lucky. We're part of the Travelopia group of companies, which means we're backed by KKR, which are a private equity firm. And they've invested with us quite heavily over this downtime, meaning that we've now got an international team. And I'm lucky enough to head up the UK side of that for Hayes and Jarvis, but we've now invested overseas, and I'll come on to that shortly. So what does that mean for our guests moving forward? It still means that unique first-hand experience. And yes, it's been tough, but what we've done is we've really handpicked the team that are going to be looking after our guests moving forward, and we've got experts in all of the countries that we service. So no more just an inquiry comes in and we pass it to the next available person. It's the person who's got that experience. We really want to get under the skin of these destinations. So there's no more call centres, no more press 1, press 2, press 3. It's straight direct lines, direct text messaging, WhatsApp calls, Zoom calls, whatever you want to be able to connect with our travel consultants. And we've really looked at our properties. We've handpicked our properties, we've handpicked our experiences. And where we've invested heavily is on our trip concierges. So now each trip, once a guest has booked a holiday with us, they will have their own concierge who are based in the time zone of where they're traveling to, which means when our guests are abroad, they can speak to somebody at the time they're in rather than trying to get hold of somebody back in the UK. And that's a huge step forward for us as a brand. And then we've been tweaking this as we've been going through. And at the start of COVID, the rules within the industry about vouchers and credit notes, it was a bit of a mess. There was nothing really in place for that. And we've adapted and we've moved and we've changed our booking with confidence message throughout. And I'm pleased to announce that on Monday, we're launching our book carefree guarantee, where there's no vouchers, there's no refund credit notes. It's just your cash back if something happens. And that's really exciting for us. And we've decided that's the best way to move forward. So a lot of development. But there's a few portfolio changes as well. So I just wanted to share with you where we travel to in the world. And there's a couple of destinations we've removed. I just wanted to make that really clear. So at the start of COVID, we made the decision to merge one of our sister brands, Oz Travel, with Hayes and Jarvis. And that's why Matt is in the Hayes and Jarvis team now. And it gives us great expertise down into the Oceania regions and the islands around. We've really enhanced our offerings in other areas as well, but one area that we have removed is the Caribbean. And being really open and honest, very competitive market. very, very competitive. And we found we were just competing on price with the likes of Virgin, the likes of British Airways, who have their own airlines. And where we can add value is in the destinations where it's a bit more off the beaten path, where it's more multi-centre, it's a bit more experiential. So we decided to remove the Caribbean from our offering for the time being and really enhance our offering in the destinations that you see before you now. So before we get started, I just wanted to launch a poll just to see what are you dreaming of at the moment? What's on your bucket list? What have you been talking about over the last 6 to 9 months where maybe you couldn't travel to? And then also, just when are you looking to travel? Is it this year? Is it next year? And this will just help us as we move forward to really structure what we're doing from a marketing perspective, where we should focus more of our energies, and in the end, giving our guests a better service level. Now, throughout the presentation, there'll be a couple of polls, and the idea behind that is to help Matt schedule what he's discussing and see how many people are interested in different areas in terms of Australasia. And then at the end, there'll be a great opportunity to ask Matt any questions. And Matt's going to give more of an introduction to himself, but he's been to the areas, he's lived in the areas, he's really felt those areas firsthand. So please, 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 any questions you can either save to the end, or as we all know by now in Zoom, at the bottom in the center, there's that chat button. Add your questions in there. I will then come back at the end and be the question master and ask Matt all those difficult questions. Matt, I'm sure you're going to get lots of difficult ones. I'm sure we won't make it easy for you.
I certainly
so
hope
without further ado, what I will do, I will pass you on to Matt. But before that, I'd like to say welcome back to 3 guests who have joined us on Wednesday, today, on Tuesday, and on Monday. So welcome back, and thank you for joining us on our journey through this week. So Matt, over to you as we escape to Australia and New Zealand.
Thank you very much, James. Good evening, everyone. It's really nice to meet you this evening. As James explained to you, I am one of the destination specialists for Hays and Jarvis now. I have worked within the business for Hays and Jarvis and Austravel for 15 years, coming up to 16 years. And my specialist destination is, as we call it, Oceania. But that consists of Australia, New Zealand, and the South Pacific Islands. So in regards to that, Cook Islands, Tahiti, Fiji, and all of the islands that are located around that area. So what that means is that I've been lucky enough to travel to a lot of these destinations, if not all of them, and I have been pretty much all over Australia, New Zealand, and the South Pacific Islands, and I'm going to really enjoy talking to you about them this evening. So it's great to see the poll there. Thank you ever so much for filling that out, and obviously great to see that Australasia is filling up with 71% of those destinations, so you're in the right place to learn about that this evening. So what I am going to do is I'm going to talk to you and start off with talking to you about the modes of travel around Australia and New Zealand. So if we've all done with the polls, I am going to clear that off the screen there. And what I wanted to have a chat with you about was basically modes of transport. It's one of the biggest questions that I'm asked when wanting to go around Australia and New Zealand. Lots of people say to me, well, how can I travel? I don't know how to get there, or how I can sort of venture around the different areas. And for me, there's a couple of different ways that I like. Certainly around New Zealand, my best way is by motorhome. If you like the sort of camping freedom style where you sort of go about your business the way you want to, there's nothing tying you down, and it's a really nice free way of traveling. The motorhomes, as you can see here, they come in variations of 2 berth for 2 people, and then they also start with 4 berth and 6 berth where they can fit up to 6 people in as well. They are a great way of traveling. They don't tie you down to accommodations, so you are constantly able to move, whether you like somewhere for an hour and you fancy sitting around enjoying that destination for that hour, or if you wanted to, you can head off to somewhere different within that hour, or spend 2 or 3 nights extra in that place because you love it. It's a really great way of traveling and makes it very sort of easy to get around New Zealand. Australia also offers those camper vans and motorhomes, but they are a little less easy to travel. I find there are different ways and variations of traveling around Australia better, but you can certainly travel around both destinations with a camper van and motorhome. Moving on to the next way, which is car hire. Now, obviously with car hire, you have no means for accommodation there. So you do have to purchase accommodation, whether that be motels, B&Bs, 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star accommodation, whichever suits you and your needs. But again, another great way of traveling around. So whether it be that you're heading from Melbourne to Adelaide on the Great Ocean Road, or up the Nature Coast from Brisbane, all of these places you can travel with car hire and accommodation, and that is something that we here at Hayes and Jarvis can facilitate for you as well. Most of our cars and our motorhomes include inclusive rates and GPS, excesses down to 0. So a lot of your worries when you're out there are completely taken care of. You don't have to worry about paying any excesses or anything when you arrive to pick up the vehicle. It's really easy, straightforward to do that way. And again, a really lovely way of traveling around the country. Third way here is something I really love, is trains. Now, there are several different trains that you can catch around Australia and New Zealand. The most iconic ones, which are your Indian Pacific, which travels from Sydney to Perth and stops off in Adelaide en route. The Garn, which goes from Adelaide up to Alice Springs, up to Darwin, stopping off in Alice Springs. And then also on the East Coast, which goes from Brisbane up to Cairns, which is the Spirit of Queensland. All of them offer a massive variety of room types. So you can go for Gold, where you can have single cabins, twin cabins, double cabins, superior double cabins, and obviously go up to the Platinum cabins as well, where you get things like butler service, transfers included, lots of food, drink, everything that you need as well. Not only that, while you're on the trains, they can be an experience in themselves. It's not just that you're sat on a passenger train chugging along to the next destination. They have things like piano lounges where you can sit and enjoy a cocktail while you're listening to someone play music. They have in-house chefs that cook food for you, and obviously drink as well. So it can be an experience in itself. As well as that, while traveling, they do allow you to stop en route and jump off the train and do excursions in different locations while you're moving as well. Those are the 3 iconic train journeys through Australia, and around New Zealand you can do some for example, the Transalpine train, which is one of the most famous trains, and that heads from Christchurch to Greymouth. So there's certainly a lot of diversity when traveling around these destinations, and I love, the more diverse, the better for me. You know, I love that thought of someone jumping in a car in Melbourne, driving over to Adelaide and doing the Great Ocean Road, seeing the amazing sights as you travel down the coastal route, seeing the whales jumping around in the ocean on the left-hand side as you're traveling down. You know, it's a really amazing experience to do that. And then when you get to Adelaide, jump on the train from or the Garn up to Alice Springs, spend a bit of time around Alice Springs, and sort of making it a bit of a different route rather than jumping on a flight and flying to each destination. It's really nice to immerse yourself in the actual scenery and obviously the ways of traveling that you can around Australia and New Zealand. So what I'm going to talk to you about now is, a lot of people come to me and say to me, well, you know, I just want a flight out to Australia. And when I ask them about why, what is it you're doing out there? You know, they say to me, well, you know, when we get there, we want to travel about, we want to see our friends, we want to travel and see different amazing sceneries, we want to do amazing things, see the iconic parts. And I said, well, let me organize it for you. You know, I can do all of that. And they don't understand that that is something we do here. So, you know, to give you an idea, you know, we can tailor make and bespoke any trip that you want us to. So whether that be 3 nights Sydney, 3 nights Ayers Rock, 3 nights Cairns, and then off to New Zealand, or we can do flying, transportation, transfers, excursions, day tours, and from private touring to sort of larger group touring. We can pretty much provide everything for you that you'd require. So it's really nice to be able to offer that to our customers and know that you're in the hands of someone who is a destination expert. As you can see, another poll has popped up there. Feel free to obviously answer those questions if you want to on that. But what I am going to do here is I'm going to discuss with you about Australia first. We're going to go into a first-hand experience of what we can offer you guys, just on a basic generic itinerary that we deal with here. Obviously, we can deviate from these itineraries. These are just sample itineraries that we can add to, take away from. If you didn't like something like an excursion, we can change it and make it completely different. Don't like the hotel? Not a problem. Plenty to offer. So it's something that we can sort of work through all the way through with you guys to make sure that we get the perfect trip organized for you. So fantastic. So we've got how many times you traveled to Australia here. So, okay, so we've got quite a few not yets, which is fantastic news for me. Obviously, we want to make sure that we can get you out there and see all the sights and scenery. A couple have been a couple of times, and mode of transport. So a lot of you are talking about the rental cars. Great way of traveling. Definitely recommend those. Fantastic. Okay, so we'll move on from our poll and start talking about the itineraries. So within Australia, a lot of people say, what can I do? I'm a first timer to Australia and I really want to see the iconic parts, but I don't want to be stuck in one place. I'd like to move around a bit. And this to me is one of the best ones that we can offer here in terms of first time travelers wanting to see a few things, wanting to sort of go off the beaten track and experience it. This one starts in Sydney, and you head around the Blue Mountains and the Hunter Valley, which I'll go through in detail in a little bit, and then off to Uluru, where you will fly. These routes can be quite long, so you will find, so Sydney to Perth, for example, which is over on the west coast, that's a 4.5-hour flight. So these are like us going to the furthest points of Greece and places like that. So they are quite a distance. So obviously, changing up the mode of travel can make it a lot easier to get around these destinations. And that's what I'm here for, is to obviously make it as easy and as simple as I can for you guys to get around. So then up to Ayers Rock, where you'll see obviously a lot of history and culture, and then moving on to the Barrier Reef and Cairns and Port Douglas. Those areas are obviously a bit more relaxing. You get to see a bit of the rainforest and obviously swim the amazing Barrier Reef. So starting off, this is the itinerary that we do work through. So Sydney, says here, the ultimate way to experience Sydney is by admiring the cityscape from the top of Sydney Harbour Bridge. Trust me, it is pretty spectacular. Those take around sort of an hour to 3 hours to do, depending on which trip you do. But it's absolutely incredible, especially if you do the twilight climbs, so you can walk up in daylight and come down in darkness, and it's absolutely unreal seeing the city in that kind of backdrop. It's beautiful, and you see all the boats coming under the harbour, and it's a really stunning way of seeing the city. I definitely recommend those. And then obviously heading on to the Blue Mountains, where you can obviously see the Three Sisters there, Hunter Valley, a lot of wine tasting. So if you do want to venture out and have a bit of wine tasting, Hunter Valley is a great place to do that before flying on to Uluru. And then on to Cairns and doing your Great Barrier Reef. So starting off in Sydney, this is just a typical hotel that we may offer. This is the Harbour Rocks Hotel, sits right by the Rocks area, and is a fantastic hotel to start off with. Nice 4.5 star, recently been renovated, and it's a good location. Anywhere around that Rocks and Darling Harbour area is a great place to be. It's got lots to offer. You obviously easily accessible to everything that you need in the city. We offer different ranges of accommodation all the way through Australia and New Zealand. So whether that be 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star, B&B motels or motorhomes and things like that you can travel in. A lot of people sort of say, oh, well, I don't want to do a city break. I don't want to sort of see just Sydney and things. But Sydney in itself has a lot to offer in its local areas. So, for example, Bondi Beach is one of the most amazing beaches in and around the area of New South Wales. It's obviously one of the most popular as well. An abundance of wildlife there, so kangaroos and all different wildlife from Australia there that you'll find are native just to Australia. They are literally on the doorstep. Whether you're heading off to one of the vineyards and seeing them there, they're bouncing around while you're having a bit of wine and enjoying the local food. You'll see obviously the wildlife all over the place. And again, there's rainforest all over the areas around the North New South Wales area and Queensland areas. So lots of areas to see. So with the Blue Mountains here, this it's stunning scenery. It's definitely one place I would recommend going to see on a day trip. You can do the private ones or the smaller ones. I'd probably recommend up to about 16 people on the trip. It's a really nice day out. You get to go and see Three Sisters Rock from Echo Point Lookout, which is based in Katoomba. It's definitely something that you want to see, and if you do get to go out on the cable car, you basically get onto the world's steepest passenger railway and descend into the rainforest with Scenic World, which is what you can see there. It's pretty spectacular and an amazing way to see New South Wales from a distance. Also, the tours run daily from Sydney, so you can get there and back pretty much very easily, and it's a great day out. So I definitely recommend doing that as well. Even going and down, just seeing the Jenolan Caves, just enjoying that. It's pretty spectacular down there. So definitely worth a visit. And obviously Sydney Harbour Bridge as well. We've had a little discussion about that, and obviously the Hunter Valley, which is known for its wine and food. It's absolutely incredible wine down there. I definitely recommend, if you like a bit of wine, head down there for a couple of nights and just enjoy the scenery and some wine. So after that, you'd then fly. It is too far to drive, unfortunately. People have asked me for a little couple of hours just to visit Uluru. Unfortunately, it's not something we can do. It does take a couple of hours just to get there by flight. And as you can see, this is it on its aerial view. some of the things that you can do at Ayers Rock, one of my favorites is the Field of Light. Now this is an exhibition which is put in by a man called Bruce Munro, and it's one of his largest pieces to date. It's 50,000 spindles of light, which the stems are all based in the ground and made to look like flowers. So as you look, you get this real, as you can see on the bottom picture there, it's all over the desert and it just lights up the sky. It's absolutely phenomenal. And with this trip, you actually get dinner included. You can just enjoy the night. They talk to you about the constellations in the evening, and actually just sitting there by Ayers Rock, just overlooking it all. It's absolutely incredible. The Aboriginal culture that they go into depth about there is fantastic as well. It really immerses you into that Australian nativity, and it's fantastic to be a part of that. And that's one thing I love about Ayers Rock. There's so much culture and so much history there. It's not the cheapest place to get to, but it's certainly one of the best places that I really enjoyed there, especially seeing all the Aboriginal artwork and things. It's really fascinating. Once you've finished in Ayers Rock, you will then fly over to Cairns, and up here is Cairns itself. There's several parts of the northern Queensland coast that I love. Cairns and Port Douglas are one of them, but there's a couple of little beaches along route which are also really, really nice that you can stop off at. A little bit more quiet, but certainly very nice, like Palm Cove, Trinity Beach, places like that are lovely little sort of places you can enjoy. And all of these locations offer trips out to the Barrier Reef. Whether you'd like to head over in air balloon ride, you can do that from Cairns. Cairns also has a lagoon as well, which is a man-made beach there, where you can actually have a little swim. It's a good option if you want to go somewhere and just have a little swim. It's not a problem, but it hasn't got the greatest of beaches. So if you do want to head out to the beaches, I would recommend somewhere like Port Douglas or Palm Cove. Absolutely stunning beaches, and I'll come over those in a second. But obviously this here with the aerial view of the Barrier Reef, this is the most amazing way of seeing the Barrier Reef. It's incredible. Jump in a helicopter, fly out over it, you get this exact view. It's beautiful turquoise blue seas, and it's an amazing way of seeing it. But of course, obviously you are going to want to snorkel that, so I would definitely recommend a few of our cruises and trips out to the ocean where you can see obviously the amazing fish. I did it 2019. I traveled out there and I was swimming with turtles, sharks, jellyfish. They were everywhere, and it was absolutely incredible. So definitely worth going out and visiting. As you can see, some of the underwater wildlife there is absolutely spectacular. They are incredible to see. Definitely worth a visit. Port Douglas, as I mentioned earlier, so this here, what you'll see is 4 Mile Beach, which actually, fun little fact for you, is not 4 miles long. It's actually only 4 kilometers long. So don't ask me why they decided to call it 4 Mile Beach. It probably should have been its name changed, but really lovely beach. If you want a beach up in this destination area, I definitely recommend heading out to Port Douglas. Even if you are going off to some of the islands of the Whitsunday Islands, like Hamilton Island and places like that, it is definitely worth heading to Port Douglas. A little bit quieter than Cairns, but you can do everything from Port Douglas that you would from Cairns, and it's known as the heart of the Barrier Reef. So all of the trips, excursions, helicopters fly out from the marina down at Port Douglas as well. It's got some beautiful hotels, a couple of them that have just opened up, really lovely, fascinating hotels. I definitely recommend visiting down there. As I say, 4 Mile Beach there. Also in this area, lots of wildlife to see. You can actually hold a koala in wildlife habitat, which is an amazing area to go to. A lovely little zoo. They have kangaroos and all of the wildlife that you'd see up there. But if you do want to hold a koala, that's one of the places you can do that. Moving on to somewhere different now. This one is an addition to our trip that we were talking about. So obviously where it started off in Sydney, Ayers Rock, and then Cairns. This is something else. You can add on different locations. So if you wanted to fly over to Perth and visit the Western Coast or come down to Tasmania, you can do that in addition to the trips that we offer as standard. So this, for example, obviously Tasmania, absolutely stunning, beautiful, beautiful location. Most people fly into Hobart and Launceston. Those are the two destinations that you can get into. East Coast, generally known as the food and wine area, and places like Coles Bay and Wineglass Bay. If you haven't seen pictures of Wineglass Bay, it's pretty stunning. It is exactly, from the air, it looks like a wine glass being filled with water, with wine. So it's absolutely stunning scenery from there. Also up the East Coast, you've got Freycinet National Park, where they have hotels such as Sapphire, which is the 5-star hotel in the shape of a stingray. Amazing architecture and views over the bay are absolutely incredible. You can also then head west, which will take you up to Straw and Cradle Mountain and those areas, which is known more as the nature part of it. So if it's more nature and scenery that you're looking for, head up the west coast. If it's more food and wine, head down the east coast. Bay of Fires. It's a beautiful area. It's up by St Helens and Binnalong Bay. Bay of Irons is approximately 4 hours from Hobart and about 3 hours from Launceston as well. It's definitely worth getting up early and experience the wonders of that area. It's absolutely stunning. It's crystal clear blue waters and white sandy beaches. You can walk for miles along their sugar white sandy beaches. Tasmania have got some of the best beaches I've seen, and it's definitely worth a visit in terms of nature, wildlife. They also have snow during certain times of the year, so skiing to anyone, they can do that. It's absolutely incredible. It's a lovely place to go and visit, so definitely recommend that. Obviously Hobart as well. One of the places that I love, if you're going to go to Hobart, you definitely have to go to the Mona Museum, which is the Museum of Old and New Art. The owner actually closes on it a Tuesday so that he can play tennis in the actual museum. It's a fascinating place to go and see. I've never seen anything like it. Lots of exhibitions on art, not your everyday average paintings and things. It's all about really strange and unusual arts, things that you've never seen before that you wouldn't even have thought of. Absolutely fantastic stuff to see, and I definitely recommend a visit there. Royal Tasmanian Botanical Gardens, or even a Bruny Island tour to go and see some of the seals and wildlife down there. You can take a tour out there, jump on a boat, and they'll take you over to Bruny Island, which is definitely an amazing part. Or if you fancy just staying in Hobart, go and visit Salamanca Markets. It's definitely a great place to go and pick up some amazing souvenirs. And obviously Cradle Mountain National Park, which is, as you can see, stunning. It's beautiful to go down there, and lots of wildlife and things that you'll immerse yourself in. Lovely walks and scenic walks out there. Lots of land and sea wildlife as well. So there is on Tasmania, there is Bondi, which is a wildlife park down there. You can actually go and see the Tasmanian devil that you see up there on the right-hand side, and also see a lot of the other wildlife that they have to offer on Tasmania and Australia. It's a great place to go and see. You can hand feed kangaroos and get up close and personal with a lot of their wildlife on there as well. So fantastic place to go and see. And then we will be moving on to New Zealand as well, but I believe we have a short poll coming up for you as well here, guys. So if you want to take just 2 seconds just to obviously have a look at the questions there as well. So New Zealand, again, one of my favorite places in the world. As you know, I'm probably pretty biased to these areas. I've sold them for a long time and traveled there many a time. So they are pretty stunning, massively different in terms of destinations and what to see and what to do. New Zealand, I find a lot more peaceful, quieter. The scenery is just out of this world, and some of the things, a lot of walking. So if you're into hiking, into walking, definitely a place to go and see and enjoy. Great. So again, 67% around not yet seeing New Zealand. So hopefully we'll get you out there soon. And a couple of you have been there 1 or 2 times. Fantastic. Motorhome on this one. Okay, great stuff. So that's one of my favorite ways to travel around New Zealand. Motorhome. It's easy. Pick one up in Auckland, drop it off in Christchurch. You don't have to worry about being stuck somewhere. It's a fantastic way to venture around New Zealand. So I definitely recommend that. So we will just get rid of the poll for you for the second. So this particular trip takes you from Auckland all the way down to the south coast as well, which on our second slide we'll show you that shortly. So this is the North Island, going from Auckland down to Rotorua, Napier, Wellington, and then Blenheim and across to Abel Tasman, which is on the South Island. Getting between the 2 islands is really easy. You can do that through the Inter-Islander ferry from Wellington to Picton, or vice versa from Picton to Wellington. You can also take your motorhome on board there, so you don't have to change motorhomes or do anything like that. It's pretty easy, and you just turn up and jump on the ship. And then this one is the South Island part of it. So this one takes us down from Abel Tasman to Kaikoura, Christchurch, down to Mount Cook National Park, and then on to Wanaka, Te Anau, and Queenstown. There are also, again, we can deviate from this. So if you do fancy heading down to, say, Franz Josef Glacier, which is just between Wanaka and Mount Cook on the west coast of New Zealand, or even coming down to Dunedin. If any of you got any Scottish heritage, there's a lot of Scottish heritage in Dunedin, so it's definitely worth a visit down there. So Auckland is generally where most people tend to start. Now, nice little tip for you: if you do jump in a camper van, try starting from Christchurch. It can actually be cheaper. You get cheaper rates starting from Christchurch and bringing them back up to Auckland. It's a really good way of saving a little bit of money, as they do need their camper vans to be brought back to Auckland at some point. Obviously, they do have the harbour down there where you can see dolphins, and obviously heading up to the Bay of Islands as well from there. It's about 3 or 4 hours up the coast, but you see all sorts of wildlife up there as well. So dolphins, whales and things around those areas. And it's an amazing part to see, as you can see, very, very beautiful. So on the North Island, generally one of the routes that a lot of people will take is heading down through Rotorua. Most people stop en route through to Rotorua to see the Lord of the Rings tours and see where they was actually filmed. So if that is of interest to you, you can stop, sort of cut the journey in half and see the Lord of the Rings tour as you go. And then obviously getting down to Rotorua, it is pretty smelly down there. It's a geothermal activity area, so it has a lot of geysers and volcanoes around that area, and it does smell of sulfur pretty much all the time. After a couple of days, you do get used to it, but it's pretty smelly. But a great place to be. You can immerse yourself in the culture and history. They have a lot of Maori culture there, and some amazing culture that they will talk about, and it's definitely one of the most beautiful cultures that I've ever heard about. It's a really fascinating story that they tell you, and it's amazing to listen to. Napier, which is a little bit further down on the east coast towards Napier. Napier is a coastal city on the North Island, and it's sort of renowned for its wine producing and being very close to the Hawke's Bay area. They do a really famous cycling wine tour. So if you fancy having a few drinks and then jumping on a bike, you are more than welcome to do so. It's a brilliant trip, and it's very scenic. If you like wine and bikes, then that is your place to go. It's definitely worth it. And Hawke's Bay makes some of the most amazing wines and has some of the most fantastic hotels and golf courses. So if you're into golf, head that way. Cowrie Cliffs, I played there, and it's a stunning golf course. I think it was 51 in the world it was voted, but definitely worth heading down to that area. It's a very sort of into its Art Deco Napier, so it's very sort of arty, and it's a great place to go and see some great stuff. Wellington, moving down now. Wellington, obviously being the capital of New Zealand, sits near the North Island, on the south part of the North Island. And it's where you get the Inter-Islander ferry from. So if you start on the Inter-Islander ferry, you can get on there from Wellington and head over to Picton. It's close to the Martinborough wine region as well, and they make some of the best wines in New Zealand. So I think there's a typical theme heading around New Zealand. You'll hear me say wine, food, and scenery quite a lot. It's definitely a great place to go if you like food and wine. And they have a little bay actually down in the city called Oriental Bay. It's very beautiful, really nice little bay. You can sit there and chill out in the afternoon, grab some fish and chips, and then just generally enjoy. It's a great little city to go to. So after heading across the Inter-Islander ferry, you stop at different places. So you can stop at Blenheim, which is just on the north of the South Island. Again, another wine region, lovely food, lovely wine. Not going to complain about the wine there. Or even heading down towards Abel Tasman National Park. A lot of people love this area because it's got amazing scenic walks. You can actually get up and close and do personal with some of the wildlife there. For example, a kayak tour with seals. So if you fancy jumping in the lake and kayaking around to swim the seals, it is pretty spectacular to be up close and personal with them. They're really friendly and know that you're there. So it's a great place to go and visit. Heading a little bit further down the north part of the east coast on the South Island is Kaikoura. Here you get to see things like the whale watching. This is really famous for whale watching all through the year pretty much, and they are pretty much guaranteed to see them all year round, or seals, a lot of wildlife in the ocean there. So it's a great place to sort of venture down. Before heading on to Christchurch. Unfortunately, obviously, a few years back, Christchurch did get devastated by the earthquakes. So a lot of the city was damaged, but they've done an amazing job in rebuilding it. It's fantastic. You know, they even had the rebuild museum, which showed obviously parts of the city that had fallen, and they put them into a museum. It's a fantastic way of seeing it. They turned shipping containers into shops, and the bank was even in a shipping container as well. So a quirky little city, and if you want to go punting on the river there, you can do as well. So it's a lovely little city where people generally spend sort of a night or two there. And then obviously Mount Cook National Park. This is actually the highest mountain in New Zealand, so it's also close to Lake Tekapo, which is absolutely incredible. The lake itself is a stunning scenery, where you would just you'll love the walking. If you love hiking, grab your boots, get hiking around Lake Tekapo and up the mountain. It's beautiful, as you can see there. It's just completely stunning scenery. Different, obviously lovely greens and the snow-capped mountains as well. It's an amazing place to go for getting it up close and personal with nature. It is also a glacial area, so they are home to the longest glacier in New Zealand. So as you can see there, it is a bit cold, but it's also a really great area to go. And they talk to you about obviously the glaciers and things. And if you're not liking getting onto a helicopter to travel up to the coast, you can jump on one of these boat trips and they'll take you around and explain it all as well in depth. Wanaka. Wanaka is one of my favorite little areas. It's a beautiful little place just north of Queensland. Sometimes Queenstown, they call it North Queenstown, but Wanaka call Queenstown South Queensland, South Wanaka. So it's a beautiful little place. You do a lot of eco tours there, a lot of eco walking and nature tours. They take you up and around the lake to see all the different destinations, and you can get really close with the nature there. But it's a fantastic place. You head out on the boats and do fishing and things there as well. Lots of lovely little hotels to stay in as well. And Tianau, which is probably one of the most famous parts of New Zealand. It's home to the Fiordlands and the gateway to Milford and Doubtful Sounds. So Milford Sound is a fjord in the southwest where they have sort of towering mitre peaks and sort of rainforest and waterfalls. Very sheer drops down the cliffs as well, so it's incredible to get out there on the cruise. So most people will either spend a day out on the cruise, or they'll head out on a night cruise as well, where you can actually stay overnight on the ship, and just it's so peaceful at night. You just sit there out on the deck looking at the stars, absolute deadly silence. There's nothing going on. It's just you're immersed completely in nature and the surroundings. It's beautiful. It's probably one of my favorite things to do out there, especially going out there and seeing things like the seal colonies, the penguins and the dolphins as well. It's a brilliant place to go. Doubtful is a little bit smaller, or a lot smaller. It's more on a personal basis. You'll generally tend to get smaller cruise ships out there. So if you like something a bit more personal that's not such a large scale, head to Doubtful. It's a little bit of a smaller location, but you get just as good views and experience there. And again, another one of Tianau there. Queenstown. It's, even though I am a huge Australia fan, Queenstown is probably my favorite city in the world. It is stunning. There's so much to do, so much diversity, culture. It's an adventure city. You know, if you want to go skydiving with End Zone, which is what I did, I think we do have a picture here. There's a few pictures of golf courses, and there we go. That's not me, but that is what you can do. So if you do want to go skydiving with End Zone, they dropped me out of a plane at 15,000 feet over the top of Queenstown, and that is your view. It is absolutely stunning, and it's the most amazing experience to do that. Definitely worth doing. Skydiving, bungee jumping. They've got a luge track there, biking, hiking, glacial helicopter tours. You can even hit biodegradable golf balls off the top of one of the glaciers, which I was lucky enough to do when I was there. I actually ended up on New Zealand TV because of it, which is quite cool. So I was hitting golf balls, which are biodegradable, completely safe for the environment, and we were hitting golf balls off the top of the peaks, which is absolutely fantastic. A bit of wine up there, some food, and some stunning views. So that brings us to the end of New Zealand, where we will move on to the South Pacific Islands. So South Pacific Islands for me are out of this world. They are just beautiful. I mean, if you want to, a lot of people compare them to the Maldives, and in my eyes, there's something so much more. They are absolutely stunning, crystal clear, blue waters with stunning white sandy beaches. They are out of this world. So if it's Bora Bora you want to head to, or Tahiti, even Moorea and the Cook Islands, Raiatea and Aitutaki, I spent a lot of time out there just enjoying the islands. They've got the most beautiful people. They are just absolutely incredible people. They're so lovely. They'll treat you with absolute respect, and they will do everything they can to make your trip the most amazing. So the ones we deal with here are obviously Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, Cook Islands, and French Polynesia. My favorite, I'm going to have to give you this one, is Cook Islands. Rarotonga and Aitutaki are stunning locations. You can pretty much relax, chill out, and do nothing if you want to. Or on Rarotonga, you can learn about their history and cultures of the Cook Islanders. They are absolutely amazing people, and I definitely recommend a little trip there. You can also, from Australia and New Zealand, do side trips out to these locations, whether it be the Cook Islands or French Polynesia, Tonga or Fiji. You can head out there for a couple of days, just tag it on to the end of your trip, just to have a little bit of a relax and recuperation after your long trip round traveling around, whether it be in a motorhome or a car. But it's honestly out of this world. If you can get there, definitely do. Nothing better than kayaking out in the ocean in the middle of the afternoon, coming back onto the beach, cracking open a coconut and just chilling out for the afternoon. It's just pure bliss. Definitely recommend doing that. As you can see there, that is Aitutaki. And this particular area, you can actually walk between those two islands. There's actually a crossing there that you can literally just walk at certain times of the day straight across. And it is pure white sandy beaches. It's absolutely stunning, as you can see from the photos. They offer a lot of different cultural experiences on the islands as well. So whether you want to hear about the Cook Islanders and people, the Cook Islands themselves and their history, about their islands, how they got there, it is a really fascinating story. So I definitely recommend speaking to a few of the locals. One thing I love about Rarotonga, which is the main island in Cook Islands, is that they have two buses. One goes left and one goes right, and they pretty much do that all day long. You can jump on and off as you go around, stop off at one beach, hour later, jump back on it, head off to the next beach. And you can just stop off wherever you want to along route all day long. The other thing I like about the Cook Islands is if you go there, they do these vouchers called food vouchers. And they sound a bit silly, but what they enable you to do is they're worth a certain amount of money. You can stop off at each hotel in their restaurants and eat in one restaurant one night, head to the next one and eat in the next one. So it's like having an all-inclusive package, but all over the island, so you're not stuck to the hotel itself. So it's a really great way to eat around the island. And then Fiji and the Mamanuca Islands. So you've obviously got Viti Levu, which is the main island. And then obviously coming off of that, you have the Isawa Islands and the Mamanuca Islands, which are beautiful little islands with lovely little hotels. They're very, very similar to what the Maldives offer. So you go to the mainland of Viti Levu, and then you head over on a boat or flight across to one of the smaller islands around those. You can also do cruising around the islands, which is a great way to see them. It's the easiest way to see them, to be honest. If you can jump on a cruise at Port General, cruise around the Mamanucas and the Isawas, and then come back down to Port General, it's the easiest way to venture out there rather than having boats to different islands and things. Bora Bora and French Polynesia. So this obviously is one of those that's on pretty much everyone's bucket list. It is stunning. And I was lucky enough to do this on a Paul Gauguin cruise. So I flew out to Tahiti. We did a 7-night Paul Gauguin and Society Island cruises where we stayed. We did French Polynesia. So we did Bora Bora, Tahiti, Huahine, and a couple of the smaller little islands that no one's ever heard of. But they are exactly how they look, pure white sandy beaches. I mean, I remember walking out off the island of Bora Bora and into the lagoon and walking around stingrays. It was just incredible. We were on the boat, and probably 300 to 400 meters out, there was whales, sperm whales, and all sorts of things sort of just breaching out the water. Dolphins. It was incredible. So a great place to go just to relax and chill. And Moorea, which is one of the islands, often as you can see there, the whales as well. So Moorea is stunning. It's easily accessible from Tahiti. You can actually get there by boat or by flight, and it has a lot of links to the mainlands. Ideally, if you're going to go out to French Polynesia, I would recommend heading out and doing one of the cruises. They are a great way to see the islands. But if not, and you just fancy one or two of the islands, then fly between them. It's also just as accessible with their flights. So that brings me to the end of our presentation there. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'd love to answer some of your questions if I can. And I believe that pretty much shortly, James is going to be coming back in at some point and if you can fill out the poll for us as well, we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have in regards to obviously the presentation. If there's something that you thought of while I've been speaking, please do ask. We'd love to hear about it, even if it's got nothing to do with the presentation in regards to Australia and New Zealand. Any questions about that, give us a shout. We'd love to be able to help you answer those questions.
Thanks, Matt. Wow. Every time I speak to you, I learn even more. I've been writing down stuff that I think even Lindsay and the family would like. I didn't realise you've got a piano lounge on the trains, to be honest. That was new for me. Yeah, every time I speak to you, just your experience just comes through. And I can see why you're the ambassador, shall we say. So fantastic. I think 45 minutes to go around Australia, New Zealand and the South Pacific Islands clearly isn't long enough. So if anybody would like to speak to Matt directly, so if you'd like to speak to somebody after this, it will be Matt, it won't be anybody else. The person you can see on the screen is the person that you will be speaking to. And then please do let us know. Please let us know. Right, so we'll go through some questions. So please feel free at the bottom of the screen just to click on the chat box and add some in. Matt, a couple of are coming through quite thick and fast. The field of lights actually was a question that came up in the presentation itself. And when I saw that, I've never seen that before. The only thing I can relate it to is sort of the gardens by the bay in Singapore with sort of the light show, and obviously it's going to be greater than that. Is it something that's a permanent fixture, or does it sort of come and go during the seasons?
Yeah, so originally it was brought in for 12 months of the year, and it was a very exclusive part where people were trying to travel out there to see it all in that year. It was only that it became so popular that they actually decided to extend it, and they've now actually continued to open it, and they have decided they're not closing it for the foreseeable future. So it's a really good thing that that they are continuing it. I hope that they don't stop it, because it is amazing and it's a big attraction for a lot of our guests.
Brilliant, thank you. And the trains, you spoke about the trains and the lots of different trains throughout sort of Australia and New Zealand. What would you say price point per night? Just very, very rough price point per night. If someone said to you, right, Matt, I'm going to go on this train for 3 nights, how much would that cost?
So if you're looking at a 3-night trip, the Indian Pacific offers that kind of a trip from Sydney all the way to Perth. It's 3 nights. Gold, you'd be starting at around £1,500 to £2,000 per person for the whole trip, but that includes all your food, your drinks, cabin, and also your excursions on and off the train. If you go the platinum service, it can cost up to about £4,000 to £5,000 in total for the platinum service, but you get things like butler service and things like that. If you do go for some of the smaller trains, so for example, you can go up the East Coast. If you were to do, say, Brisbane to Cairns, you can do that for as little as £500. It's an overnight train, and you get a premium seat where it's a lie flat bed where they turn it into a bed at night and seat by day.
Well, fantastic. And there's a lot of questions here about weather and best times to go. If you had to say sort of best times to go, when would you say? There's a lot of questions here about sort of our winter, especially sort of December, Jan and Feb. Would that be too hot? Can you give us a bit of a background on the weather in those areas?
Yeah, sure. So if you take Australia as a whole and split it straight the way through the middle, horizontally, it's a very tropical climate. So the north part is more tropical, is a tropical climate. So during the year, so for example, from May through to October, any part above that line is it's actually their winter, but it's nice heat with nice sunshine. It's the best time of year to go to Cairns and the Barrier Reef because the visibility under the ocean is a lot clearer. Also, the weather up there is a lot better. Although throughout Queensland, 300 days of the year, it's pretty much sunshine. So it's a good place to go, Queensland, pretty much all year round. During the months of April to October, the south part is their winter, and it's a lot wetter. So you will find that it's more typical to probably your British summer, if I'm honest with you. So you tend to get obviously a little bit cooler, bit more rain down in the southern part during May to October. Best time to visit the south is any time between October and April time, really. You'll get the hot weather, and it is nice. December and January, Adelaide, Melbourne and Sydney can be extremely hot, upwards of 40 degrees. So I recommend the months of February, March, October, November. Those are my favourite months to travel to Australia.
I think anything specific, email Matt directly. He'll give you, because it seems to be very, very bespoke depending on where you are. So just email Matt and he'll sort that out for you. A couple of questions about South Pacific, which I'm going to try and group together. Okay. It looks stunning, Matt. It looks stunning. How expensive is it?
Okay. So when I did a typical itinerary for one of my customers, which I use all the time, it's a very popular itinerary, I for South Pacific, for example, I did 3 nights in Tahiti, 2 nights in Moorea, 2 nights in Raiatea, a 3-night cruise around some of the islands, and then finishing off in Bora Bora for 4 nights. Roughly around the 14-night time, including flights, we were able to get this for around the 14 to 15,000 pound mark, and that was staying in really nice 4 to 5-star hotels. I would have said that if you are looking at going to some of the 5-star options, you can be spending upwards of 20 to 30,000. If you are looking for the South Pacific Islands, likelihood is I would expect to be spending between 10 and 15,000 pounds for a typical 14-night itinerary there.
And that's per head?
Total.
Per couple?
So you can do per couple.
Per couple.
Yeah, you can. Bearing in mind the flights out to those destinations, because there's so few, the flights start from around 4 to 5,000 pounds for the couple together. So that's 5,000 pounds of any budget gone just on flights, because there's very few carriers that get them out there. So then when you add on the accommodations and things, you can do it cheaper. You know, you can find lovely little 3-star hotels and things, but you know, they are few and far between, and they're more difficult. If you are looking at doing that island hopping, I would probably stretch to sort of 10 to 15,000 and get a really lovely island. And also definitely go for ocean view rooms. Don't go for the garden view, in my opinion. I had a garden view in Aitutaki and in Rarotonga, and I just sort of felt I'm on an island. I want to see the sea. Why did I go garden room? So definitely go for ocean view if you can.
Like we say in the Amalfi Coast, go for the sea view, go for the sea view.
100% sea view.
You mentioned there about cruising. You said you've done that before as well.
Yeah.
Are there lots of different options around the South Pacific Islands, or is there one sort of main operator? How big are the ships? Just a little bit around cruising.
There's actually several different cruise companies that you can use. Paul Gauguin are my favorite one. They are incredible. It's all inclusive. Everything is included. There's no hassle. Anything you need, they'll do it for you. They're also a smaller ship of around 500 people. So their ship is actually built specifically for the French Polynesian islands. So they have a flat bottom boat. So you actually get into some of the smaller locations. So they're really amazing places to sort of get involved into. I would have said that there are certainly a lot of options in terms of cruising, but most people, if they're going to do 5 or 6 different islands, will do a cruise. If you're doing 1 or 2, like say Tahiti, Moorea, and Bora Bora, some people do tend to fly as well. It can be done. Wouldn't recommend swimming. It's probably a little bit too long.
And another question here coming, Matt, and I know we used to do this for the Neighbours TV show. We used to do a tour around the Neighbours set, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I can't remember how much it cost now, but I do remember that. I do remember putting that into the Oz Travel brochure. What about the home and away and beach set? Do you know if we do tours or could organise tours around home and away?
Yes. I mean, you say that. I mean, I actually had a chat with Carl Kennedy a little while ago, and he was. we do offer. There are ways of getting the home and away tours, and obviously the neighbours tours as well. So there are. They can be purchased if you want those as well. Like I say, we bespoke pretty much anything we can around Australia. We can offer you pretty much what it is you're looking for. So,
not sure if we can guarantee Carl Kennedy, but
pretty sure we can't. No, nice guy though. Really, really nice guy.
And the trip around New Zealand that you showed, Matt, you know, going across the 2 islands, sort of, hitting all the big places in one trip. What would that cost with flights? 2 people, that trip with flights, ballpark figure?
Yeah. So generally, I would recommend at least 21 to 28 days on that trip. If you're going to do 21 nights, I would expect between, depending on standard of accommodation, anything from 3-star at around 6,000 to 7,000. Upwards of sort of 10 to 12,000, depending on the standard of accommodation that you're staying in, and obviously car hires and things like that. I would have probably said you're looking at around ballpark figure 4,000 to 5,000 per head.
Okay, thank you. And we spoke about the size of Australia, and people don't realise how big it is, the size of Europe almost, or can fit Europe inside it. How long, sort of east to west and north to south, would you say it is in terms of maybe flying, driving? How would you, if someone asked you that question, how would you come back with that?
So in terms of flying, Perth to Sydney is around 4 to 4.5 hours. Sorry, Melbourne to Perth is around 4 to 4.5 hours. Brisbane to Perth is about 5. So those are your longest points pretty much that you can fly. It's about 5 hours across from horizontally, so from east to west. North to south, generally around the 4-hour mark. So Sydney to Darwin, for example, is around the sort of 3 to 4 hour mark. You can do Sydney to Ayers Rock in about 2, and Melbourne to Cairns, so south to north east is around 2.5 hours.
Brilliant. And I know when we've been catching up with Tourism Australia over the last few months, they've been talking about sort of getting off the beaten path, haven't they, and not just seeing the tourist hotspots. So for people that have been to Australia 2 or 3 times, what other routes could we suggest which are off the beaten path, so maybe away from the typical tourist route?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the places that really I love, it's an amazing part, is the Northern Territory area. So Darwin, Broome, and all of those locations. So if you take the northern part, if you did a trip around Darwin down towards Kakadu National Park, Litchfield, and sort of around that area, you go see Jim Falls, Twin Falls, some of those locations around there, you see huge amounts of wildlife, loads of amazing different walks that you'd never have seen in sort of Sydney or around those surrounding areas. And the Aboriginal culture and things is so huge over there. It's an amazing place to go. Even if you wanted to take a small flight to a place called the Tiwi Islands, which is a small native area of which nobody's ever heard of them. I actually was lucky enough to go over there, visit some of the locals. They shown us how bush tucker that they eat. They did all sorts of things, but it's completely off the beaten track. You probably never have heard of them. But if not, somewhere like Broome and the Gibb River Road, it's an amazing drive to do, but obviously be careful of your weather around that around certain times of the year. Pretty much around the Northern Territories area, roads can turn to rivers, so it can be pretty wet at certain times of the year. You might meet the odd croc here and there.
I think, Matt, next time Australia Tourism call up and say, we need Matt Doidge out again for 3 weeks, I'm going to come and carry your bags, I think. And another question here, which is really interesting. I love the emoji face after this one, so thank you very much. The Australia itinerary that we showed, how long do you think that would take? And obviously we can tailor make it to anything we want to, because we have the ability to do that. But how long would you say is the optimum time for that trip?
Yeah, so I would have definitely said a minimum of 12 nights, but we can certainly extend it up to sort of anything upwards, really. A lot of people come to me and sort of say, I want something in a 2-week time frame. What can you do? That to me is the epitome of a great itinerary in a 2-week trip out from the UK. So Sydney Rock and Reef, 12 nights, easy. I personally would extend it up to sort of 14, 15 nights if possible.
And if you're adding on Bora Bora to that, that's a question that's coming. You then add on how many nights actually, sort of do what, 2 weeks, then you'd add on 3 or 4 nights. You're talking sort of 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, I would have said you're looking at least a minimum of 21 nights. Main reason is actually the flights home. Believe it or not, you actually cross 2 date lines while going to and from. So Australia, you leave, you arrive into Bora Bora the day before you left. Then going down to America, you arrive back in the day after. And then when you leave America, you arrive back in the UK the day after that. So it's actually 3 days to get home. So it's a pretty harsh trip home, but that's only due to the time frames. I'm crossing the date line. So I would say 3 weeks minimum.
But you're either like Doctor Who, though, you can go back and forward in time, which is great.
Yeah.
And then using our insight that we've got, from the knowledge from Tourism Australia, flights commencing back to Australia, we know they've been really tight with their COVID restrictions. Any inside track, Matt?
So from my connections and things, we have been hearing that a lot of the borders are looking to open up sort of the end of the 2021 period. A lot of people have been looking at early 2022. Flights have been a lot of restrictions been put in place, mostly for compassionate travel and residents that are getting onto those flights. Certainly over the next few months, I wouldn't recommend traveling, but we are having a lot of people looking at January, February, March, April for next year. It's huge at the moment. We're getting a lot of people since obviously the government meeting at the weekend or earlier this week. Lots of people have been coming to me saying, right, I want to get my flights booked to Australia next year. So hopefully, fingers crossed, early next year, people will be traveling again.
Getting a lot of bucket list requests, aren't we, this week, Matt? We're getting a lot of
Yeah.
real lovely inquiries that people are ticking those boxes, which
Yeah,
is fantastic.
definitely.
And if you were visiting Western Australia, so we're talking Perth, Margaret River, Vineyards and Broome,
Yeah.
how would you get about it? So if we drop you in there now, Matt, what's the first thing you would do to get around that region?
To me, I actually bought my own car traveling up the West Coast. I actually drove from Broome all the way down to Margaret River. At 19 years old, I did that drive. And knew what I know now, back then, I'd have done things a whole lot differently. But unfortunately, I didn't have the knowledge I have now. And I decided to buy a car. But I would personally drive it with accommodation and car hire. Stopping off at some of those local destinations, heading down from Perth, like Broome, from Bustleton, Bunbury, Margaret River, Albany, places like that. There's stunning different destinations. I definitely do it by car hire and accommodation. Heading north, a great way to do that is actually by camper van, because you can head up the coast, stopping off at, say, the Pinnacles, Kalbarri, Cervantes, doing Monkey Mia, and then heading back down and sort of more inland is a great way to sort of travel around that route.
Wonderful. And we've got a question about saltwater crocodiles.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure I'll answer this one, but go for it.
Yeah, so just what about them? Where do you see them? Are they dangerous? Anything about saltwater crocodiles? You're probably going to tell us that you've wrestled one or something.
Well, yeah.
Just interested to more information about that.
Sure. So pretty much saltwater crocodiles, they are everywhere, but they hang around sort of the northern parts of the area. So Darwin, Northern Territories, all around that sort of area. They obviously have saltwater, which are they're more aggressive type, and then they obviously have their I've forgotten the name of the other ones now. They're sort of a more placid variation. But I was actually in the Northern Territories, and I have had the privilege of swimming with both. So when you're in Darwin, you can swim with the saltwater crocodiles, where they drop you in a perspex cage into the container where the crocodiles are, and we were dropped into the pool, and this huge, great big alligator or crocodile swam down, and I was in the perspex cage, and I didn't think anything of it, and all of a sudden he turned, whipped his tail, and smashed the side of this box. Obviously, it's built to withstand the pressures of that, but absolutely incredible to see. It was probably about 15 feet long. It was huge. And then I also went on a day tour from Kakadu National Park, where we jumped in a sort of one of the waterfalls. And what we didn't know was there was actually smaller little crocodiles around the area. And the guide said to us, "Oh, just stay away from that area." And we were like, "Well, why?" And the guy was like, "Well, there is alligators, there's crocodiles in here, just be careful." And of course, literally everyone just jumped out, and he was like, "They won't hurt you, it's fine." But it's they are everywhere. But to be honest, the guides are amazing on the excursions. They won't let you go anywhere that's not safe. So it's absolutely fine. You won't see any that much.
And obviously, Matt, you've been out there a couple of times. Would you suggest sort of stopping off on the way to break it up? Obviously, Emirates have got that direct flight, haven't they, to Perth, which is a bit of a game changer. But would you suggest stopping off, and which way would you go?
Yeah, absolutely. So with Qantas's direct flight now from London, it's fantastic. I flew on that back in 2019, 16 hours, easily done, no problems at all. It was lovely. But I personally love a good stopover. Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai. There's so many places you can stop. Most places tend to stop via the Far East and Near East now, tend not to be around from the Americas. They have cut a lot of those routes. But if you are looking at sort of a couple of nights in Singapore or something like that, it's a great way to acclimatise yourself to the Australian timings.
An airline of choice down there? Obviously, Emirates give us a lot of opportunities out of local airports, but airline of choice?
I would, for comfort and enjoyment, I would have said Singapore Airlines. If you can stretch to business, I would definitely do that. It is amazing. I had my own cabin, which was incredible. I didn't believe it when I walked on and there was nobody else in business class. It was amazing. And then that was incredible. But I think for ease and traveling around Australia, if you're doing a lot of stops, do Qantas. You've got the direct to Perth, so London to Perth, and then doing the internal flying is made cheaper when you purchase internal flights with the international flights with Qantas. You get those internals at a reduced rate. So I would say Qantas.
That's really important, isn't it? I think a lot of people try and when you're booking it yourself, you forget that you can get those internals at a real good rate if you get it as an airline package.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the last question, unless other people want to add in, is the tours that we can offer, Matt, can we do them with private drivers as well?
There are certain tours that can be offered through private driving. If you want to include them, we can certainly do that for you. They're not going to be cheap. They are generally done in sort of 4-wheel drive. They are a fantastic way to see the scenery and to see what you're going to see. But my personal preference is find one that is maybe 10 people, 12 people. They're a really great tour because not only do you have fun, you meet new people, you get to experience it with other people and see their reactions to it. And I personally found those much better in terms of the smaller tours. I wouldn't be going to 30, 40 seater coaches. We personally tend not to sell those. We tend to sell the more privatized ones. But if you do want to do just a two-person one, go for it. You know, we can arrange them for you.
And from a motorhome perspective, question just come in. Can you pick it up somewhere, drop it off somewhere else, get on a train, pick it up somewhere else? Really flexible?
Yeah, absolutely. Around Australia, you have around 7 or 8 different destinations. So mostly those are in the main cities. So Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Cairns, Alice Springs, Broome, Darwin, and Perth. You can pick them up, drop them off pretty much anywhere, and you can have them multiple. Just a tip for you, the longer you do with the motorhome, the cheaper you're going to get the motorhome. So if you do a 21 night, your rate comes down. So if you've got like 19 nights, you might find it's really expensive. But if you go to 21, they reduce that price. It comes down cheaper than what it is for 19. But yes, you can pick up and drop over all over Australia and New Zealand. There's 3 destinations, which are Queenstown, Christchurch, and Auckland.
Wonderful. Well, Matt, that's the end of the questions for you. So you can breathe, sir. And just last thing to say really is if you do have an inquiry for this region, it will be Matt that looks after you, apart from in a couple of weeks' time, where Matt's due to have a baby, which is quite exciting. So he might be on paternity leave, but we do have someone else who knows the area as well. That's it from us this evening. We're just going to send a poll to yourselves just for some feedback. And this is the first time Hayes and Jarvis have ever run a webinar series, and I'm on the hot seat tomorrow night going through the private villas. So any feedback that you have, good, positive, negative opportunities for us, we'd really, really love to hear it. A few things have come up about different destinations people would like to see as well. So we really appreciate your feedback. And thank you again for joining us this evening as we really escaped to Australasia. And thank you to those 3 people who have joined us Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday night so far. I hope you 3 will join me tomorrow evening as well as I take centre stage with the villas. So all that's left to say is thank you once again, and we hope that we speak to you all soon. Someone just said, how do we get to see the private villas tour tomorrow? It's a great question. I know who asked that question, and I will send you a link tomorrow morning. If anyone else wants a link, it's james.golding@hayesandjarvis.co.uk. So have a great evening, everybody. Open a bottle of Australian wine, and we'll speak to you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a good night.